Hey.
What are you doing? You know how long it took us to get him up there?
I do, but you can never hang a leprechaun on a hook, Shawnee. My uncle hung a leprechaun on a hook. Once.
Hello again and welcome back to Beyond the Beermat, the podcasting equivalent of Ric Flair on his best day. I'm not talking about in the ring, I'm talking about all the styling and profile he's out of it, and potentially the amount of adult beverages he consumed as well. Certainly 5-star match. We've got not necessarily 5-star beers, but at least 5 beers. My name is Stuart Quigley, alongside me is...
Matt, alright?
Yeah,
you alright?
Always the cordial intro as ever. What we're going to talk about today is this idea of, we've spoke on numerous podcasts, pretty much almost every podcast that we've done so far, this idea of the writing is the be all and end all of why things don't necessarily work the way we want them to work. It is the biggest crutch in the industry, and basically everyone could do it better. I want to sort of break down not necessarily what WWE should do. I want to sort of get into booking philosophies and how, let's face it, how we would book shows, not necessarily individuals, although we will give individual examples, but the ins and outs of basically how we know much more than people that have been in the industry for many a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. First and foremost, right, a question I want to ask you is, what is your biggest booking pet peeve in terms of things that the writers do a lot that really pisses you off?
I don't know, Stu. Nothing pisses me off about wrestling. I fucking love wrestling.
Yeah.
I can't say. This isn't my naivety about wrestling. I just can't name like one individual thing that they do that annoys me.
Okay, so what about...
Because like you said on the previous podcast, either way, wrestling continues.
Oh, yeah.
It carries on, so it doesn't matter. So if something's a bit shit on Raw, at least you've only got to wait 7 days to see what's the next thing that's shit on Raw.
I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about a trope that they use quite often. Something like, and I'll give a perfect example here, people that are feuding win the tag team titles. Can they coexist? All that bollocks. 2 guys come out and cut a 20-minute promo. Someone else comes out, and then we get a tag team match.
Oh, Teddy Long booking?
Yeah.
Nah, man.
You're into all of that?
No, yeah, I'm into every single aspect of wrestling. Like, legit. I'm not taking the piss or anything.
You do sound it a little, I'm not going to lie.
That's just how I sound. That's my general demeanour. Sarcastic bastard.
Jeez.
No, man. Fine, let him do it. There's only so many rolls of a dice, unless you've got, like, Vince Russo booking, where you get super booking.
I'll agree with you in this regard, and we'll get on to Vince Russo very, very shortly. This idea of, like, when you sit there and think about it, you go, oh, there are so many possibilities that we could open ourselves up to if we just opened ourselves up to them. When it comes down to it, there aren't as many as you think. And
I've just realised what pisses me off. Letting the celebrity go over. Man, that annoys the fuck out of me, it really does. When the celebrity, when they bring in, like, what's that Green Arrow fella called?
Stephen Amell.
Where they make him like a superstar that can hold his own against Cody Rhodes, and Jay Leno that can hold his own against Shaq.
Do you know what?
Shaq that can hold his own against, I don't even know who he feuded with in WCW. And David Arquette.
Well, yeah, no, that's a very specific booking misnomer, as it were. And I know how I feel about this because I've been doing this in my head for many a year. But do you think you have? Would you call yourself to have a particular booking style? Because I know for a fact that I have one. I fantasy book when I watch Raw, I fantasy book it as it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just watch it, just enjoy it, Stu.
Do you never like sit there and go, oh, I do it with films as well. I think this is the kind of almost wrestling gene, as it were, because it's not just wrestling itself, but when you watch, does it not frustrate you when you watch TV shows and or films and you think, hang on, you've got an hour and a half and or an hour, depending on what you're doing, and you've put over this character, and this character, and this feud much better than Raw can do in 3 hours?
No, definitely not.
Jeez.
Definitely not. I don't.
Maybe I'm taking it too far. Who knows?
Yeah, I think you are. I can see wrestling from a mile off and go, oh, I know what's going to happen here. Oh, the underdog, they're only going to go and win, aren't they? Hey, they've only gone and done it.
Someone's got a big pay-per-view match at the weekend and they are holding high the belt before it. Oh, they're definitely going to win it.
Yeah, you can see what's going to happen, but I don't ever sit retrospectively.
Not retrospectively, I'm talking about in the moment.
No, even then, no, of course I don't. I'm just like, just watch it.
Do you never sit there though and go like, this is the best case scenario, and the best case is usually the scenario you come up with in your own head.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, that's the best case scenario. And then you go, what the WWE are going to do, the most obvious scenario. And they don't even necessarily have to do that. Like, it's just what the obvious thing to do is. And every now and then they swerve. Yeah, the most obvious example being, everyone fantasy booked the shit out of Lesnar Goldberg the first time around at Survivor Series. Although technically that wasn't the first time around. And then when Goldberg ran him over in a minute, there were a lot of people going, no one could have booked that.
No, exactly.
And then reality of what actually happens. I go through that process every time I watch Raw, Smackdown or a pay-per-view.
Why would you do that to yourself? You're just making more work for yourself.
It's just creativity, surely. Is it when you watch wrestling? That's you see a storyline. That's what you're given information about a certain character, like on his journey from A to B, whether A to B is from his journey from a jobber to the world title, or whether his journey is just from he was a tag team guy, now he's feuding with the guy he was tag teaming with, and then you think you've given me this information, I could sort of get to the end before you. How would I best get to the end?
I think that's probably the difference between me and you, though, Stu. I think you're a read a book and analyse every page as you read said book.
No, I don't.
Whereas I'm a look at the back page first. Yeah,
no,
let's go and read the end of it, see how it all works out.
I don't go from A to B. It's not a question of the fact that I go from A to B. It's a question that you go straight to B. You get to the end.
Yeah, I
first.
know what happens. Fuck it.
Ironically
No
enough,
surprises.
Yeah.
I like a nice, easy life. Yeah, I don't want any surprises.
Ironically enough, that is how you book. That is how I think everyone that has ever held a book, not necessarily a written book, I'm talking wrestling terminology here, like written a storyline. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
You go from. And again, this goes back to what I asked you in the first instance, and this is what I'm walking you through this idea of if you were to book, you book from WrestleMania to WrestleMania. So you go, that's me personally. They probably do it Survivor Series to WrestleMania. That's your run-in, as it were.
Yeah.
And I only book WrestleMania to WrestleMania because I'll hold my hands up here. It's a flawed system. You can't book year to year nowadays. You just can't.
Unless you've got the star power.
No, I don't even think that. I think with injuries, with the fact of people not necessarily getting... You can't commit a guy to a year-long storyline, and if he doesn't get over in the first few months, what do you do then? Like, you've got all these plot points that you want to hit. Say if you've got a 12-month storyline, you've planned everything out, and I think this is the sort of the falling hole that many wrestling fans like myself fall into, this idea of, oh, I want them to do much better long-term storylines, but if you book too far ahead, you don't know what's going to happen in 2-3 months' time, let alone
I know, but
12.
you've always got to have a contingency plan, haven't you? You've got to have plan B.
Oh, yeah,
If something goes tits up.
100%. This is why I find it interesting and frustrating in equal measure, this idea of, in the Attitude Era, the best era, which there was some questionable booking, that just got lucky with the actual stars in and of itself that were around at the time. Everyone was involved in a feud, right? If you've got now on Raw next week, say like we were both writing the storylines and everyone was involved in a feud, we literally sat down and we went, I've got from top down every single member of this roster in a feud, and then one of them gets injured. What the fuck do you do then?
Well, that's the thing, wasn't it? That was Russo booking. That's what he did. He made sure that everyone on the roster, it doesn't matter how low down the card you were, you always had a storyline at least. You had something going on. And so I think it's easy if someone is injured. How long are we saying for the injury? For this hypothetical situation, are you saying a week? Are you saying 6 months?
It doesn't matter. The whole point is that like if you book yourself into that sort of minutia, whereby everyone on the roster is dealt with, once one card falls out of the deck, the whole house of cards comes down, so to speak.
No, I don't think so, because I understand where you come from in terms of all of these storylines. Whilst everyone has their individual gimmick, they're all sort of, to some extent, they're all linked. There's only so far outside of the wrestling universe that someone can go, because all these storylines have to be intrinsically linked anyway to make it actually
never
work.
really are, but that's what you'd like them to be.
As long as you have all the superstars actually fighting for something. So say our feud is, say you're Juventud Guerrero and Psychosis, and we're fighting for the Cruiserweight Championship. Say that Psychosis gets injured and you've only got Juventud, at least he's got someone else that's also in the same division that he could fight for.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you've got everyone else tied up,
Yeah.
then say you've got Juventud, Psychosis, Super Crazy, and Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, but that's the benefit of WCW. That was the highlight of WCW. The fact of, if you have got one man injured, throw him into a three-way match the following week, and then at least it's progressing a storyline. Because then, if you can book it on the fly that way, in terms of, oh, someone's injured, oh shit, what are we going to do? All of a sudden, make the underdog out of this three-way match, then go over. You've just gone and booked yourself another fucking 3 or 4 weeks in advance, and the workers are doing the job for you.
Ironically enough, I think we've stumbled on the same point, but from the opposite ends of the spectrum. My argument is that if you book everyone in very long-term, very detailed, very intricate storyline, and then something happens, say a storyline doesn't get over the way you thought, which is what no one that fantasy books ever puts into their head.
Yeah.
They always think that my storyline will get over. Not necessarily. There have been a lot of terrible gimmicks that haven't got over, but there have been a lot of good guys that just, for one reason or another, haven't got over. And the other thing as well is to do with injury. So if you've got everyone in this fucking amazing season-long storyline that you've masterpiece that you penned out in your brain, and then one thing falls out like Jenga, okay, you can replace the one, and then you can do this and do that.
Yeah.
Eventually, it will fall apart. However, on the same token, if you're booking sort of a case of like week by week, and you're going, okay, I'm going to do this with these and this with these, and as long as you've got a broad idea, I'm going to go maybe a month in advance, and I know where I'm getting the next pay-per-view. The problem with that is that like you're not thinking forward enough in a sense of like, okay, Psychosis is fighting Juventud. What is my end goal for that? Like, who wins that? And then what are they doing afterwards? Are they going to try and fight someone else? Because basically, the thing that like wrestling seems to fail on now is this idea of like whenever a feud ends, the next guy whoever they're fighting should be for A, a reason, and B, a bigger challenge than the one previous.
Yeah, well that next person should already be in a position where they should be challenging anyway. You shouldn't just have, and I think there's another reason, that's what I don't like about wrestling, the fact that you've got an underdog face that's struggling to win a belt, all of a sudden they win the belt, the writers have nothing for them, so what do? Just turn them heel, turn them into the arrogant champion. When really what it should be is the fact that someone's worked their way through the ranks as being the underdog face. They've gone and done the impossible by winning the belt, but then straight away you should have the next legitimate challenger that's going for them. So rather than just Bobby Rooding them, because that's what they did at TNA, and that's one of the, not the earliest, but prominent sort of things which happened when I was watching TNA. Bobby Roode's champion, so what should we do? Just make him arrogant and make him a heel, although he struggled. But what they didn't do is then have like a legitimate contender straight away afterwards, and so they were just pissing about. So give him weeks and weeks of just promos and like cheap victories as a heel, when really they should have had someone there in the blocks ready to go and get him. That's why the story stagnated, didn't it? And that's why it dies.
You're saying, okay, you've got to have the next guy ready. The only way you have the next guy ready is you have to do it while the other guy's getting in his storyline. So there are two ways, realistically speaking. You either have a guy come down a level and he's suddenly a bigger deal because he's fighting someone, and the talent level, quote unquote, of what you've been trying to portray of. Say if Brock Lesnar decided he wanted to go after Bobby Roode for whatever reason that you decided to write, you'd be like, oh fuck me, Bobby Roode's got some serious business to deal with because Brock Lesnar's coming down to his level. Or you build someone up organically.
Yeah, but that's how you make stars, isn't it? By building people up like that. I don't think Bobby Lashley is the right example to use, because you're using a bloody great big bodybuilder, basically. I think if you picked a mid-carder, so my favourite, go for Sami Zayn. If you stuck the belt on Sami Zayn, what two angles have you got? You've got one, the likes of Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns, that would have to come down to his level, so fighting a smaller man, and so that way you book the champion as a sort of shithouse heel in terms of stealing victories, or you make them the underdog, or you get someone lower down, so let's go for the likes of No Way Jose, and you suddenly push them a lot higher by actually putting them in the championship picture. I'll tell you what, as an example of a current champion that could play that role, AJ Styles. a wrestler that I don't rate, and I sound like a shithouse for saying it, because a lot of people will say he's the best in the world, but I can't, unfortunately. But AJ Styles, as a smaller champion that's held the belt for a long time now, if you had a bigger wrestler, so I mean in terms of actual body mass, not in terms of star power, but actual mass, so the likes of Lashley, Reigns, Lesnar.
I'll give you Reigns and Lesnar, but I'm not giving you Lashley just because there's a whole aura there.
Yeah, there's a stigma behind him from TNA anyway, so you might be treading over old ground. But if you had either of these two, actually go for him, so he's the smaller man, or you still put him in that position where he can, at his age, certainly bring people up that are a lot younger, that are his body type as well. You can still make it work. I think AJ Styles is in the perfect position to be, it sounds shitty now, but he could be the perfect champion in terms of doing the job for both ends of the spectrum.
I agree, because what you've got is, and this is just to do with styles more than anything, across the board in WWE, you've got guys like Goldberg, as an example. Say if Goldberg was your champion on Raw, and Rey Mysterio was your champion on SmackDown, and then you had a champion versus champion match. And all you've done on Raw and SmackDown is establish that Goldberg's your big guy on Raw, and Rey Mysterio your champion on SmackDown, and these are both the pinnacle of their brand.
Yeah.
When they meet, you've got to figure out a way of putting them on an equal playing field.
That's where you're going to get this shitty, dusty finish, though, aren't you?
I agree, but like there are ways around that. I don't even think WWE would be stupid enough to book themselves into a corner, which just happen very often, of Goldberg versus Rey Mysterio, and neither one of them can come off looking bad.
But then you can spin this to actually work for you. Goldberg versus Rey Mysterio, and you get the likes of, I'm going to bring a current wrestler into it. You bring Samoa Joe out. Samoa Joe, who he's certainly got a talented superstar there that could easily run in, interfere in a match.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, one, you've got a hell of a performer against Rey Mysterio, or two, you've got a legit contender against Goldberg.
Yes.
So that's how you book that screwy finish.
That's the common sense answer. That's the thing of like this is the thing that like we talk about often enough that wrestling is missing. This idea of like you ask a question, which is how does someone like Rey Mysterio, who has been built up in this imaginary scenario to be like the top of SmackDown, how does he compete with Goldberg, who has been built up to be top of Raw, even though there's a huge size difference? What you do is you add a third party.
The variable.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Which would be a great nickname for Samoa Joe if we wanted to.
Variable. Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
Badasses.
But then, in that regard, then what you don't have in these imaginary scenarios that we come up with, that fantasy booking that we've just done, it's problem, it's solution, and everyone gets over.
Yeah.
Try doing that again when you've got, was it 4 shows a week?
Yeah, exactly.
You
save it for your pay-per-views, but then it's the same logic in it. You can't do that 12 months on the trot.
No.
You can't do that. But then you're not always going to have champion versus champion.
No, but what it is, it's I think booking essentially, and again, I'm speaking as someone that has never, probably will never hold any sort of position in wrestling. I'm going to get nowhere near booking a show, as much as I would absolutely love to, but this idea of every single person that writes storylines falls into certain, I don't know, crutches, as it were. If I've got Goldberg and Rey Mysterio and Samoa Joe and CM Punk, 4 random bullshit wrestlers that I've thrown out my arse. Not physically, because that would be, my arse would be
That'd
like
be painful.
Also giving birth to some serious wrestlers.
It would.
Vince McMahon would be hovering over me with a basin at all times.
Squeeze, you son of a bitch! I want another main event.
But say you've got those 4 guys feuding with each other. The obvious thing to do is I don't want them to fight each other on Raw or SmackDown every week.
No, you certainly protect them.
Yeah. So the way to keep them apart, but yet put them together, is you either do some sort of bullshit talking segment, or the obvious solution, which WWE does, but I don't think they do cleverly enough, which is the old Goldberg and CM Punk versus Samoa Joe and Rey Mysterio. Stick them in a tag team match, the 2 feuds that are fighting each other, That's relatively straightforward. What they end up doing is they have a 20-minute segment of, they book a match which is, I don't know, whatever main event they book, and then within the first segment, which is 20 minutes talking, that main event gets changed into some sort of tag team match later on. Don't tell me I'm getting one thing and then give me another. Give me the thing in the first place, tell me why it's important, and then here's the crucial thing that I think is lost now in after 1998 to whenever it was that it died. Clean finishes aren't necessarily a bad thing.
No. Yeah, I think that was probably one of the downfalls of the Attitude Era. The fact that you kept giving us these screwy finishes where nothing was actually resolved.
Trying to protect both guys.
Yeah, and in the future, yes, it has protected both in terms of, I'm going to use Chris Jericho as an example, the amount of screwy finishes to his matches, especially when he came into the Feds, where he was still, as he's admitted in his numerous books, where he said he had to learn the WWE style of wrestling, so hence the reason he'd wrestle Road Dogg or X-Pac week after week to learn this is the way we wrestle here. You might have wrestled in Germany and Mexico and Japan and all around the world, but you have to learn our style of wrestling. You've learned the skill, now do it our way.
Yeah.
So much like driving a car, you learn how to drive a car. It's only when you're actually on the road driving yourself where you learn in inverted commas how to do it. And I think you've protected them so long by giving these sort of screwy finishes, where now, looking back, if Chris Jericho came in, it would be like, oh, he is such a superstar, which he is because he did his time at WWE. But for multiple wrestlers, so you did the same with Bob Holly. Bob Holly learned how to do his craft the WWE way during the Attitude Era. If you brought him back now as an attraction, I still think for such a shitty gimmick and for however much people think he is an asshole of a man in real life, a bit of a bully, a bit of the old JBL syndrome.
J Bully L.
Yeah. I think he'd still be an attraction nowadays. An example that reflects on Bob Holly is Billy Gunn. When Billy Gunn came back during that WrestleMania 28 thing against Sting and Triple H.
They had a run as well afterwards.
They did, didn't they? Yeah. He's still got some draw to some extent.
I will say this, and far be it for me to quote unquote defend the Attitude Era, because like, I think a lot of the decisions that were made there, in fact, do you know what? It's not even necessarily the decisions that were made, it's the reverence with which it's held. And that's the only way of doing things. My thing with protecting guys is that it's a fallacy, because look at every other sport. Everything that we love about sport is this idea of, on any given day, a really, really good team, whether it be basketball, football, American football, cricket, whatever sport you care to name, or individually, tennis, boxing, MMA, whatever, someone who's supposed to win doesn't always necessarily win.
Yeah, that's the difference between wrestling and real sports.
Sports entertainment, yeah. So,
well,
I'm just saying that, like, all you have to do is just this idea of, like, say, coming out on Raw this week, say Roman Reigns fights Heath Slater. Heath Slater is a terrible example because we have a history of him being a jobber. But anyone that's like lower on the card and isn't necessarily seen or perceived as great, if they go for 25, half an hour, it has to be a good match. I'm not talking about these generic rest hold matches like Roman Reigns and Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal's
Randy Orton versus anyone.
Yeah. But just this idea of, like, you can take a guy to your limits, and then what happens after that, and then it's like, okay, fair enough. You were the better person on that day, I'll be the better person forever. Kevin Owens was introduced to WWE audiences, not NXT, but WWE audiences, by beating John Cena once, and then he lost 4 times in a row afterwards, I think. But all it was based on the idea that, like, Kevin Owens can come in, and on any given day he can do that. And that's, I think, the way that you sort of go about it. I don't think you have to legitimise wrestling in the sense of, like, make it like a shoot sport, or at least seem like it would.
Are you saying that booking any wrestling federation, namely the Fed though, is the hardest job in the world. Because one,
TNA is the hardest job in the world to book. And I actually think the guys doing it are doing a really good job these days. I find that fascinating. I never thought I would say that, and I really don't believe that TNA will be a number two. I don't know if we'll ever see the same as what we saw before in terms of a number one company in WWE and a direct rival. I don't know if we'll ever see that again, which is why I think TNA is the hardest to book. Because if you do it well, what does it matter? And if you do it shit, you get shit upon.
no, what I was going to say is, because essentially you're doing two jobs.
Yeah.
You're booking a kayfabe sport and you're also booking a soap opera. Essentially, you've got two jobs in one.
You say that, I don't think that's that different to any TV writer in any TV show ever. The perfect example I will give you, and I don't know if you've seen this TV programme, but have you seen Glow on Netflix?
No.
Which is a TV show about a wrestling show.
Yeah.
And then in the second series,
Yeah, but you're not booking the actual. You got to remember, these agents are booking. So, first time we've used the word agents. They're booking the actual match as well as the storyline and all that bullshit that comes with it, all the drama.
yes. Which is funny actually, because the match is the be all and end all, really. And forget like the storyline, this and that, and the other. Everything else is the sauce that makes the dish, so to speak. Whereas the match is the actual meal itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? But trying to sort of deconstruct it, if you're a writer of a TV show like something like Glow, which is the example I use, any TV show you can make a list of like who's your main eventers, who's your mid-carders, who's this, what are the feuds. If you watch any soap opera in this country, and again other countries are available, but like soap operas, and you see it done like wrestling, you get like the main event guys who are featured, and then what you often see as well, which is really rather interesting.
I can see my Ian Bills, I can see my Phil Mitchells, I can see my Pat Butchers and my Peggies.
Yeah, they're Attitude Era style characters.
Yeah.
They've been built year upon year. The funny thing is when you watch these guys who are jobbers, who then become to feud with them,
Yeah.
and it literally is exactly the same as wrestling. So I don't necessarily think that it's two jobs. I think it's one job. You just have to be very aware of the fact that your job hinges on the fact of them doing their job in the ring. And in today's industry, with the wrestlers and the talent they've got, I think it's an easier job than maybe it was in '98. The problem you've got is the crowd. The crowd will not accept, the crowd will not take what it would have took then. So you could give them a cogent storyline. You can give them better wrestling than they've ever seen.
Which they're getting.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if quote unquote the wrong guy is getting the push, they will shit all over it and you're fucked. This is what I said to you before about this whole idea of if you commit to, I'm going to do this guy versus this guy, and this is my end result, even if all of it is for the benefit of the company. Say you want to do two different feuds, a mid-carder versus a mid-carder, and another mid-carder versus a mid-carder. I'm not going to name any names. And then what's going to come out of that is one of the mid-carders is going to look fantastic, another mid-carder is going to look fantastic. They'll both then feud with each other, and then organically we'll create a main eventer because of that. Doesn't matter. If the crowd doesn't like one of the guys, the whole thing falls apart. This is what I said. Yeah. This is the whole point of
So is that what you're getting at? The issue of booking, you're relying on the crowd to basically buy into it.
It's such a fine art in the sense of we all watch the shows, and I know you said you don't, but I know for a fact that wrestling fans watch the shows and create their own storylines and want to have their guys win the titles, do this, do that. And whenever you see a finish that's shit, or whenever you see a finish that's not quite what you wanted, you're like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, I would do this better. Even if you go into a match and you must have done this. The guy I wanted to win won, but it would have been better if they'd done it this way.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is this whole idea of like we've got a whole audience that are in the soap opera analogy. How many people watch any soap opera and go, I could do the storyline better?
Millions.
Really?
Millions of middle-aged women watching EastEnders and Coronation Street.
They don't
every
say
week.
they could do it better. They just eat it up. It's like cake. It's like a limited cake. You'd have it.
I'm never going to make. I will, but for the purposes of this podcast, I will never make the soap opera reference ever again.
No, it's fine. But I'm just saying that like you have an active audience that thinks they can do the job better without having any experience.
The whole point of it is it's an escape from reality. You son of a bitch.
I agree, yeah, but there's
It's
no
an escape from reality. And so
where's-
fuck it. Why? That no. This is a reflection on the bookers then, and this is. I'm going to lay down the law on the bookers and on the writers of wrestling. All right. The whole point, like I said, from day one of podcast number 1, and as my media studies teacher taught me many years ago, the whole point of soap operas or wrestling or anything basically is an escape from reality. Well, films to that extent. If you watch lots of Marvel films, you fucking nerd.
Sure.
The reason I watch Ian Bill on EastEnders become homeless and lose his family and then have his child murdered on Christmas Day
Jeez.
2 years ago, because it makes your life seem a little bit better. And so that's why I don't fantasy book when I read /watch/read Raw or Smackdown results. It's because it's trying to make your life feel a little bit better than everyone else's.
The point I'm trying to make is that the job itself of doing it is a lot harder than it actually seems.
I know that, it's because you're doing 2 jobs in one, but you don't think it's 2 jobs in one?
It is one. It's one job. It's one job, but it's a very nuanced job. It's a job where you have to sort of change it on the fly, but also have a long-term plan, but also have a short-term plan and a medium-term plan. And
Nah, bullshit, man. Every job you should have that. Every job, you need to have a contingency. If you don't want to be the man at the bottom of the ladder where the buck stops, you need to have a contingency plan.
let me ask you a question, fundamentally. Is there a single company in the world that with quote-unquote the best booking could get close to WWE? If they booked everything perfectly, could they get close?
How do you mean? What do
Like
you mean?
every
Well,
single
like you
store-
said, WWE is sort of is it a nuance, a niche, a sort of
Niche.
that's different to everything else.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you mean then?
I just think this idea of if every single storyline was like, you remember when Breaking Bad was supposedly the greatest show on TV?
Which it was, apart from The Wire.
Yeah. We're both literally just naming cliches at this point.
Yeah.
But say a wrestling show somehow managed to hit on that sort of vibe of writing.
Yeah.
And funny enough, there was a really weird moment where Lucha Underground had that. There was like a hot minute where it's like really good writing, good wrestling, great production, still didn't break the ceiling. So is there a possibility that like with the right wrestlers and with the right production and with the right guys, anyone can get close to WWE?
Yeah, I think they could.
Really?
Yeah, if they did something with that hot minute, like you said about Lucha Underground, the whole reason Lucha Underground didn't go any further is because of politics. They weren't prepared to make deals with UK Netflix to actually get over it, yet they weren't on American Netflix. They weren't prepared to make the right deals to actually spread their wings and go any further. Maybe the owners of Lucha Underground, whoever they are, I don't know who they are, didn't feel safe or comfortable enough to make that leap. But it's the same with doing literally anything in terms of life.
Yeah.
If you're not prepared to take that next step to actually test the market or go any further or make that gamble, like I can completely understand if there's a financial investment behind it, certainly financial, and you're not prepared to make the leap to the next stage, then don't do it.
Yeah.
But if you feel safe enough to do it and you've got the money to back you up to take these opportunities, then do it. I think the problem is at the moment, for the likes of Lucha Underground, for the likes of TNA, maybe not so much New Japan, in terms of they've got a shitload of money behind them, don't worry about that. But for these independent companies, if they haven't got the money to do it, although they're not feeling 100% comfortable, they're not going to do it. But I think there are things that could do it if they wanted to.
Okay, so that's fine as long as the criteria exists.
Yeah.
But that does sort of bring me on to my next point, which is that it's sort of like a flip reverse of what we were just talking
Oh
about.
yeah, I like the way you work it. Blazing Squad, my boys represent.
I'm just going to flip reverse it, which is the sense that I don't think WWE believes that, because if they did, they wouldn't book storylines the way they did. They wouldn't
That's their own
necessarily.
arrogance.
It is an arrogance.
Exactly, that's their own problem. That's old Vinnie Mac.
Yeah. So just to sort of, I want to diverge slightly before we wrap this up, because there is a point you just made, which is the idea of like, how come TNA have had their notorious booking problems, WWE have their booking concerns, shall we say? I don't watch this enough, but have you ever heard anyone bitch about New Japan's booking?
No, but then I think it's a different branch on the tree, isn't it?
This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, do people bitch about the booking because they're too close to it? and they can't just take a step back and respect the wrestling for what it is.
I think you've got a couple of different issues there. One, well, from my standpoint, the only interactions I really have with New Japan are one, online, and the internet community, and two, I think it comes down to the culture of the booking anyway. The way Japanese wrestling is actually observed is a whole lot different to the way you see wrestling in Chicago. People won't stand up, people won't cheer. They make noise when something actually legitimately good happens, or they see legit technical ability. So coming back to Chris Jericho or Chris Benoit or multiple other names that appeared at that time in New Japan, Raven did it as well. Vampiro, he was a massive name in Japan at one stage, and when they did things that actually made an impact, then they get a reaction from the Japanese crowd. And I think it's probably the patience and the courtesy of Japan in general, which causes that domino effect in terms of that's why you won't hear feedback if it's negative.
That's fair enough, because not only have American audiences, and us as well, Western audiences, if you want to call it that, been trained differently in terms of what they see. Like, society in general, this sort of side of the world has got a more OCD. It's like, put a good match on. Like, I refuse to believe you can book a 60-minute Ironman match these days.
Why? Because you have the crowd chanting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Crowd chanting is an issue,
Yep.
but just sort of the idea of...
Damn it, Dolph. We had it in the palm of our hands. We could have had something special, Ziggler. You and me.
But yeah, so this idea of like, yes, okay, the culture's different, this is different. But I think what it comes down to is this idea of, it's kind of got to be a mix of, you're talking about Jericho, you're talking about Benoit, you're talking about Vampiro, you're talking about Raven, you're talking about all these guys that have gone to Japan and done it, right? Any person that can do it across the globe, regardless of talent, whatever aspect of that talent is, whether it's charisma, brawling, technical skills, you have to. And I think this is where booking falls down, is you have to marry a really good wrestler with at least a competent storyline. We can't just see a really good wrestler and go, he's a really good wrestler, and that's it.
Well, that's the
It
thing.
should be enough,
That's the thing.
but it's not.
That ties into what you said. You got to remember all of these people. So the likes of Jericho, Benoit, Raven, Vampiro, these that went to Japan, went to Mexico, they had a different look straight away, didn't they? Because one, they're not Mexican, and two, they're not Japanese.
No. There's a difference between getting over and staying over, in the sense of like anyone can sort of have a hot minute where the crowd reacts to them, or a couple of crowds react to them for whatever reason. It's this idea of like, say you're booking any promotion and you go, oh, we've got this guy, he's Chris Jericho, the crowd seems to be reacting to him. If you then just suddenly go, oh, we're going to make him seem like a jobber for the next 3 weeks, suddenly he won't be over. Mm-hmm. It's this idea of catching a guy when the crowd catch him and go, we'll take that guy
and do something with him.
Yeah. As opposed to going, which is what is the modern sort of trope, we're going to make a guy from day one. It sounds really bad that this comes down to the Roman Reigns thing, but it kind of does a little. I don't think no one really cares that much about Roman Reigns, the guy, because like, if they do, they're a bit of a dickhead. But it's just this idea of like, yeah, the Shield, brilliant, and then after that it's just been, he's the guy, he's the guy, he's the guy, he's the guy, he's the guy. Regardless of what the storyline either side of it says, it's that like, I'd be fine with Roman Reigns if he were ever portrayed as an underdog legitimately, but he's not. It's like, oh my god, how is Roman Reigns going to overcome the odds of losing a title shot and then getting a title shot the next day? We said at the start, think about things that really piss you off. It's this idea of like almost unlimited title shots.
Roman Reigns wasn't the first one to do it though.
Batista was the first one to do that.
Johnny Cena had a go at doing that.
Probably.
Guess what? You're getting fired. Next night on Raw.
Yeah.
Welcome to the championship picture.
It's such a frustrating thing of like, do consequences mean anything? No.
Well, apparently not.
Consequences never really meant anything in wrestling.
No, because consequences, all they do is add a stipulation to a match to divide people in, and then mean fuck all, because the only people that are getting the stipulations are the people that are in the main event picture in the first place. And that's a reflection on WWE in terms of not giving everyone a storyline or something to fight for.
Also, as well, like in terms of you want to make matches mean something, you want to add on the most consequences. If John Cena loses this match, he's fired or he joins the Nexus. Maybe not put that in if you've not thought what you're going to do after that.
Yeah, what the follow-up is.
Yeah, I think basically what we can sort of ascertain from all this is the idea of like booking's harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
Because you've got very many different moving parts that at any time can sort of crash,
So shut up, everyone that's booking online. Yeah,
including me.
sure.
Yeah, and then on the second time, it's a case of like it would be nice if they booked slightly far in the future, but not too far because again things can change.
Yeah.
But I would very much on the side of let's have more cogent long-term storylines.
Did you say
Is in the actual word, yeah. Is that like the word of the day or something?
Royal Rumble.
Oh, okay.
Who's this? Could it be? Yes, it is.
Well, it is. It's me finishing the podcast. This has been Beyond the Beermat. Thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.